So in this episode coming up, we got really deep in a question.
It's a little mushy today.
The Girls Gone WOD podcast girls, of course.
What
they
are
always
they trying to do to us?
They like to fuck with us. Yeah. They asked us a really good question about our insecurities and how we handle them. And one of the things that we really, the common theme in that conversation was that it's really important to have people around you that you can talk with about these things and be open with. Know you're not being judged. You know that the advice you're going to get is going to be coming from a good place. And it really helps you become aware of all these different things. And, what really pops into my mind talking about that was just the forum that we have.
Oh, yeah.
The private forum that we created.
And I don't know if we even really intended it to go that direction at one point, but I think that so many people connected with each other when we first started it that they felt so comfortable with sharing these things that they wouldn't share with even their other friends.
People
or family.
saying they're engaged in like all these like megalithic like life moments they're all sharing here because it's just a free format for people to just help each other out and
become a very strong community that's judgment free, right? I mean, I feel like everybody is there.
It's there's the support factor, there's the information factor, people sharing such great information, debating great ideas, and I love seeing that because people are respectful and they just want to get to the truth. And so it's just kind of the vibe, right? It's the culture of the forum where people are really just trying to get to the truth of of whatever question. And at the end of it, people come out learning something. I learn every day going on our forum.
Absolutely.
It's an awesome community. We're not going to keep it open for new people forever. That's just the reality. We don't want to. I'm not trying to get it to 10,000 people. At some point, we'll create something else that where we could grow that. But this core forum right here, we keep raising the price because more and more people are signing up, and the price will be going up again next month. We are going to be raising the price again, so we're going to close out on the current rate for it this month. We're also giving away free forum access if you enroll in the RGB bundle, which is MAPS Anabolic, MAPS Performance, and MAPS Aesthetic, 9 months of exercise programming. Or if you enroll in the step above that, which is the MAPS Super Bundle, which also includes MAPS Anywhere, which is our equipment-free workout program, and MAPS Prime, which we also talk about in this episode, which has a compass which helps you self-assess and then teaches you how to prime your workout. So if you enroll in either one of those bundles, you get forum access for free. And by the way, once you're in, you're in for life. You pay once, and that's it. Regardless of how high the price goes up or however it changes, you're in for life. You can find all of this at mindpumpmedia.com.
T-shirt time.
Let's fly them shirts out.
Yeah, we had 20 reviews this week.
Okay, back on top.
Yep, back on top.
Goodness. I was getting depressed.
I thought you liked bottom. Ooh, sorry.
Hey.
We're giving away 6 shirts.
Only on Thursdays.
All right, so I'm going to read these off. We got Dirty Doof.
That's a dirty doof.
Yeah.
Winner.
Handsome Han.
Winner.
Wow, I like that guy.
Flashathon.
Winner. We got some good ones.
Flashathon.
I want to sign up for that.
Yeah,
How about this one?
In here.
Organ Vibrator.
Whoa.
Organ.
Play me a tune there.
Did you say Oregon or Oregon?
Organ Vibrator.
Organ Vibrator.
And finally, Got Bags. All of you are winners. Send your name, the one I just read, to iTunes at mindpumpmedia.com. Send your shirt size, your shipping address, and we'll get that right out to you.
Thank you.
If you want to pump your body and expand your mind, there's only one place to go. Mind Pump. Mind Pump. With your hosts, Sal DiStefano, Adam Schaefer, and Justin Andrews.
Blame it on the Doug. Yeah.
Hey, what happened? We on the way to Reno, we must have we did a whole series of 80s cartoons.
It's all night.
You had a ton of them in your Rolodex there. What happened, bro? Did you lose them?
What do you mean?
No, they were TV shows.
I got them all.
Or TV shows, yeah.
TV
shows and commercials,
yeah.
Justin had a ton of jingles. Did you lose them already?
Well, you know which one tripped me out the most?
I'm banking them all, dude.
It was Bosom Buddies. You guys remember Bosom Buddies?
Yeah.
Bosom Buddies for most of our listeners, because I'm sure none of them know what I'm talking about. It was an old, very popular TV show where there were these two guys. The premise is fucking stupid, but anyways.
And they cross-dressed.
Well, hold on. An apartment is so hard to find in New York, apparently, during this period of time, that they finally found this perfect apartment with a perfect price, but
it was in a ladies only.
it's in a women's only
setup.
building.
Yeah.
So in order to get the apartment, what they do is they pretend to be women, and so they dress up as women when they're there. And Tom Hanks was in it. Tom Hanks was one of the guys.
That's right. He was. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't remember Tom Hanks being in it.
Oh yeah,
Whoa. Yeah, man.
It's the funniest show ever, but it would never work today because
Oh no!
now you just be like,
would freak out, dude.
now you just be like, oh, they're just looking for an excuse to
funny,
dress up like
yeah.
girls. You know what I mean? It would never work. It was hilarious. Remember they'd answer the door when someone would ring the doorbell.
Yeah.
Who is it? Who is it? Yeah, that would never work.
No.
What'd you guys do this weekend?
What did we do this weekend? Weren't we together this weekend?
Were we get
Weren't we
together?
wasn't this Reno? Where were we just at? We just were together,
at
dude.
Reno.
No, we
came
weren't.
back.
Yeah, what
Were
day?
we?
Yeah, what day we get back?
We came back on Friday.
Oh, so we had Saturday and Sunday. Jesus, dude.
What did we do in Reno?
I
That would
wasn't
make us
even
forget
here, man.
everything.
Seriously,
Yeah.
I was trying to plan something with my buddies the other day, and I'm like, honestly, and they get so mad at me. I'm like, I don't know our schedule. I have no idea where we're supposed to be. I feel like we're here one day, that way another day. Someone's coming another day. Like this has been. Talk about quite the experience right now. This is just. I've never had anything that I've done that requires this much flying in and out all over the place. Like I'm enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. Like
It's awesome.
Yeah, I really.
But it's also can be challenging, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't imagine you guys with kids and stuff like that, and family at home how
It's
challenging.
like
I mean,
jockey. It's a jockey race.
Luckily I'm blessed with a good family, and then my girlfriend watched my kids for the first time last week.
Oh,
which
how'd that go?
Yeah, it was like
she's a wizard with children. I mean that like literally. She's a wizard. I've seen her with my kids. I've seen her with kids in her family. I've seen her with like when we're out and there's like a random kid. Like they just connect with her, and she gets my kids to do shit that would normally require. She gets them to do it easily. Stuff that requires me to become gangster. Like when I'm
So
I'm
she's
going to give you 3 seconds before I.
secretly beats them.
No, she's so. You know what it is? God, I had a crazy realization this weekend. So she's just super effective, and I think when you're raised a particular way, and then you have your own kids, you don't realize that there may be some things that you're doing that are ineffective or wrong because it's so
hardwired.
It's so hardwired. You don't realize. Like I'll give you an example. Like in my culture, so my family's Sicilian, and in my culture.
A lot of hands are thrown around.
Yeah, no, and in my culture, like you feed the fuck, you force feed your children. You just do it, and we all joke about it, right? Like grandma, making you eat all this food, and if you don't eat, she feels offended, and so you feel like you have to eat more.
Too skinny.
But it's in our culture to the point where dinner time is stressful for everybody because if the kid doesn't eat, then you bribe them, you threaten them, you can't eat this unless you
make
eat
them
that.
stay there until they finish the entire plate.
Yeah, it's that whole thing, but it's so ingrained in my culture that I've now connected it with like that means I'm a loving parent. Like if I give my kids something to eat and they're like, I don't want to eat this, if I don't make them eat it, I must not love them. And it's this really deep ingrained thing inside of me.
Oh yeah, I can totally identify with
And
that.
it sucks because I didn't really fully realize it until recently because I was talking to my girlfriend about this, and she's like, I'm watching your daughter, and she's over my parents' house, and my mom is like, obviously she's old school, and she was like getting my daughter to eat all of her chicken, and she's like, and I can see how stressed out your daughter is about it. And she goes, if she does eat it because you're pressuring her to eat it, what are you accomplishing? You're not. What you're doing is you may be setting up a bad relationship to food. And I was like, holy fuck! Like I am totally doing that. I'm totally creating this bad relationship by doing that around.
I had a moment like that because my son's birthday is today, and
oh, happy birthday!
yeah, hey, happy birthday, my buddy.
You're Italian.
You're
We
Italian.
went from
son,
Irish
Nino.
to Italian all of a sudden. I don't know. It's a party. Hey,
You fucked up your accent.
Your poor kid. Your poor kid's gonna be so fucking confused. Dad,
I
what
was
am
like, wait a minute.
Irish? Am I
Like,
Italian?
Yeah, he just doesn't know.
I'm not sure.
He's all the above, probably. But yeah, no. So we were at my in-laws' house, and so we're going through the same process of like, okay, there's all this food out there, and my youngest, he eats so much food for breakfast. Like we realized, like Courtney and I both realized that this is like our time frame with him. Like he does best at like eating like as much of the calorie bulk of the day is breakfast. And so eating dinner, like dinner is like this weird social thing, right? It's this pressured situation where you have all the families are together and we're all kind of celebrating the birthday. And so you expect the kids to behave a certain way. They have to sit still. They have to like never talk, they have to like eat all of their food that they prepared for them because, it's, and I get it. Cause there's a lot of love that goes into preparing these foods and wanting these kids to enjoy it and all that stuff. But I know my son's not going to eat any of it. He's not going to eat any of it.
Oh, really? Is he
No.
super picky or what?
No, yeah, absolutely. But he just doesn't eat dinner at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So here's something that happened this weekend that was so effective that my girlfriend did. So she's been reading this book on communicating with children and how kids learn best. And one of the things that she did is she gives them an option. So she'll, like she said to my kids, like, okay, I made, lamb, I made broccoli, and I made, rice. And my daughter would be like, well, I don't like lamb. And she'll be like, okay, you can choose to eat something else, but you have to prepare it yourself. Here's what we have in the house. And of course, we don't have shitty, bad foods in the house. It's not like, okay, your options are, Fruity Pebbles. And, I said something like, I have sardines, I have tuna fish, and I have chicken. And you can prepare it yourself and eat it. And so my daughter is very strong-willed, very, very strong-willed, which I love. I love that about her. It makes it difficult, but I love that about her. So my daughter's like, well, I'm not eating lamb. So I'm like, well, you can prepare yourself some tuna fish and eat that. So, it's up to you. And she goes, fine, I'll eat tuna fish. Now, I know damn well tuna out of a can is fucking disgusting, but she chose it. So I said, no problem. So I went along with it. And I said, okay. So she got the tuna, I helped her open the can. She did the whole prep, put it on a plate, sat down in front of it, and she fucking ate it. And I know she didn't like it, but the reason she ate it is
Because it was her choice.
She
Because it was
said
her
she
choice.
would.
Absolutely. That's smart.
And not only that, but I'm not creating this anxiety like situation where this stressful situation where they develop this potentially bad relationship with food or eating time or whatever. And the other thing too is like if they don't eat lunch, like I'll pack them a lunch, and if they come home, they used to get in trouble. I'd open their lunch and be like, "You didn't eat your lunch," And now it's like, what's the big deal? Like if they don't want to eat, fuck it, they don't eat, and that's fine. You're not going to die if you miss one meal.
Yeah, isn't it so counterintuitive? Like it's so counter to our message of like how we now as adults we're trying to like portion out and like cut down on the amount of food. But meanwhile you're trying to stuff your kids with like as much as possible, like in an obese kind of mentality.
You can't tell me. You cannot tell me that is not going to promote. That's my realization. Like I totally realized, like, holy shit, I am promoting the exact opposite.
Well, you know
of
where
what
that comes from. It's that famine mentality. It's the old school. It's like my parents' generation where it was passed down to them that like, no way, you have to lick your plate clean,
right?
Before you leave this table.
Well, I mean, not that many generations ago, like my grandfather's generation in Sicily, they were very poor, like very, very poor, and you didn't always have great food. So sometimes you had food in front of you that it was plain or gross or whatever. And it was like, eat the hell out of it because who knows?
Yeah, you might not get another meal another day.
And so they developed this
That's a real thing.
They developed this like manipulative like culture of how you manipulate your children to eat. Like you time them, you create a race, like who can eat the fastest, or you bribe them, or you punish them, all around food. And it hit me like a ton of bricks this weekend when I saw that, and I was like, wow, that was effective.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy fuck, what I'm doing not only is not working, it's doing the opposite of what I want to do. And there's nothing like, as a parent, let me tell you something. There is nothing like realizing you're fucking your children up. I swear to God, like you hit a moment, you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh shit.
I've been doing this. Yeah.
What have I done?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was that. And,
this weekend I actually had an opportunity to spend some time with a child therapist, right? So she.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I actually, it's funny we're talking about this right now because I love when I meet somebody like this, and I get to ask her, what's your favorite part of the job, and some paradigm shattering moments for her. And when I meet someone like this, I'll absorb as much information as I can, and then I'll take notes in my phone, and I'll go back and research some of the stuff that she gave me and start reading myself. And so she told me one of the most paradigm shattering moments for her in her career was reading Dr. Mary Ainsworth, and it talks about the attachment theory. And it goes right along the lines of what you guys are talking about right now about they break it up in 4 different quadrants on the type of attachment that the child has created because through the relationships, and how that is deep rooted in all of us. and it really shapes who we become as adults. And she told me, read into her stuff. You'll enjoy some of that. So I've already started researching, looking into it. So I'll let you guys know when I pick it up. But I love this stuff. I think that one of my favorite things to do when I meet people is to kind of learn about their childhood, because I think it tells so much about a person. Learning about someone's childhood and their library of books, to me, like, I can find so much out about a person like that. And it's crazy that so many parents, especially young parents, people that have kids in their early 20s, it's such a scary thing, I feel like, because you're having kids at such an impressionable age, man. That 5 to 7 year olds, like this, they're really shaping their mind at that time. And she
no pressure.
Well, it's funny.
God damn it,
well,
you're right.
she actually, what she said though was, and she was careful when she's sharing this with me. She's like, I'm not to say that, like, scare everybody away, because it's impossible to be a perfect parent. She's like, it's possible to make every right decision. It's not about that, but just being aware of that and being mindful that, you're shaping a mind that you're forming an adult right now, from 5 to 9 years old. The way you communicate, the relationships they build, the relationships they have with food, like you guys are talking about, will form them for the rest of their lives. And I just don't think a lot of parents, especially young parents that have kids, really think about those things. They're so caught up and they're still figuring their fucking selves out. You're 25 years old or something, and you still haven't fucking fully grown up yourself, and you're still trying to figure out your way. Meanwhile, you've got a kid who's 5 years old that you're shaping and forming them. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes you got to stop and think about it before you just yell at them for doing something, or scold them for this, or take something away from them, or not spend the time to explain to them why you're doing these things. Like, all that shit matters.
And this is why when parents become grandparents, they're like so excited to become a grandparent, because it's literally
like they learned all this shit, right?
Well, because I think what happens,
no pressure.
Well, from talking to like my parents and my kids' other grandparents and other people who are grandparents, I'm very curious with this process, and because there's this common theme, right? Like, when you're a parent, you're stressed out, you're running all over the place, then all of a sudden you become a grandparent. And you're like, oh my God, it's even better than when I was first a parent. And part of the reason is, I think when you first become a parent,
pay more attention.
Yeah, you forget to be present, and then it's gone, and you're like, oh my God, I totally missed out on all that time. Now I get to kind of revisit it again. I read a quote. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was something like, kids do a really bad job of listening to what you're going to tell them, but they do a really good job of copying you or observing. So in other words, I think 90% of the battle is just be what you want them to be. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Well, that's like 90% of it.
Along the lines of that, another thing that she shared with me, and I asked her about, and she talked about what she called motivational interviewing. And she said that, something that is showing a lot of progress, right, in their field, is actually, instead of like telling somebody like, no, don't do this, or trying to like force kids in a direction, is actually finding the things that motivate them and helping them break down why they enjoy that so much, and encouraging that direction based off those things, versus you need to do this, or I want you to go this direction, like because you're supposed to, or like that. Well, let's discuss the things that actually really motivate you, and then let's break down why you like doing that stuff so much. What is it that you enjoy, son or daughter, that makes you drives you to do these things, and helping them connect those dots even at a young age. I think that's the part that where a lot of people just miss out on. And that's why I love when you guys share your guys' interaction with your children, because I think that you guys are very aware parents. And I don't think there's a lot of that, man. I mean, I grew up in a home where, my mom had me at 20 years old, dude. So, and then my dad commits suicide when, I'm 7 years old, and then she remarries into an abusive relationship. So my poor mom is like, she's fucking in a whirlwind, and I'm this kid that's kind of growing up in all this.
Well, you were thrust into becoming a parent. Exactly,
and that's actually the role that I have with my own mother and father. Is it's a reverse role. It's really ironic, and I totally am grateful for that, because it forced me to mature at a very young age. But I mean, a lot of people don't know how to separate themselves from that, and like pay attention to like, hey, my relationship. And I think you guys do a really good job of that. So I really like when you guys share. I know Mind Pump is so fitness related, but damn, dude, I feel like so many people, and being a kid who grew up in a home like that, it means so much to me to hear guys like you guys share that information with the thousands or fucking millions of people that are listening to the show. Like,
well, when you
it's
look
a whole nother learning process, just going through like the learning curve of being a parent and mistakes that you make. And, like you said, it's really just about acknowledging that you don't know everything. And like, you just have to be real mindful about what you say, what you do, and just kind of observe your child's behavior and see it's a reflection of yourself. Like everything you're doing, like their patterns are just a mirror of what you've established. So
yeah, I mean,
it's crazy.
Part of that conversation I had over the weekend with my girlfriend was, she made this interesting point, and she said, if you just, and this doesn't matter if you have kids or not, it's just if you just try to be a little bit better every day. So every day I'm just going to become a little bit better of a person. Over time, you become a really, really good person. If you treat parenthood like that, where every day I'm going to try and be a little bit better, you end up becoming a pretty awesome parent. And to take it back to fitness, I know Adam, you mentioned we're a fitness show, and we are. But I'll tell you what, when it comes to all the issues that people have with food and exercise, I think you could bring it all the way down to things that may have happened in childhood.
100% I believe that. 100% I believe that.
So, and it's true. We know this as trainers. When you work with clients and people who have issues with food, whether they, don't eat enough or they eat too much, or they find themselves binging, or they have, issues with, ballooning in weight and then dropping tons of weight or whatever. You can really usually take that back to something that some kind of insecurity or something they developed through childhood. And, so that was one of the things for me that was big. Like I thought to myself, said, you know what, I gotta be very open to the fact that I may be doing this completely wrong.
Well, I think that's what inspired us a lot with this show, is that, we all battle our own insecurities. I mean, we're dealing with our own stuff that, we've had since we were kids, and it took 30 years to put it together and realize, like, holy shit, like, this is really the driving factor. And I think that you can't avoid that, right? I think it's inevitable. That's going to happen to everybody. Everybody's going to have some sort of a driving insecurity. And I think the trick is to be aware of it and then to know how to use it. Like, I feel like there is some strengths behind that. I mean, some of the greatest athletes and the greatest minds that I've personally have met and sat down with, like, some of these guys, like, part of why they're so successful in this other area is because they were so driven from an insecurity. So it's not like it's all bad that comes from an insecurity. I think it's just having control of it and being aware of it. I think that's the ultimate goal.
Having the attitude where you can grow.
Yeah.
Having that growth, that growth mindset.
Grow from it, right? To learn how to harness it, to understand that, hey, this is what's motivated me for most of my life, but it's not my end all be all, and there's more of me from this, so. Bring on the psychology bird here, please.
The childbearing bird.
Yeah, right.
The Eagle has landed.
Chimera Quaw! Today's Quaw is being brought to you by Chimera Coffee. It's the only coffee that is infused with all natural nootropics for a cleaner, calmer, and more focused buzz without the crash. Click the Chimera link at mindpumpmedia.com and input the discount code MINDPUMP at checkout for 10% off.
It's the motherfucking Quaw.
The Eagle has landed.
All right. First up is Carlos Benitez. Why can some people eat like shit and stay lean?
That's a good question, because I hear this from people all the time, and I observed this as a kid myself. And when I went through personal training school, or through the fitness world, I went into it thinking to myself, like, man, like, you've got some people that can eat whatever they want and they stay skinny, and then you've got other people that barely eat and then they get real fat, and what the hell, what's going on? Someone has a fast metabolism, someone has a slow metabolism. That was the language that I understood at that time. And then I went to, get my first certification, and they taught us that it was calories in versus calories out. And it was all about how many calories you burn, how many calories you eat, and that was it. And then I thought to myself, wow, those fat people really lie. They're liars. Like, they just eat like a ton of food.
It's crazy.
No one's around.
We all went through that at one time.
Yeah, and that skinny people, they eat a lot of garbage, but they don't eat a lot of it. Like, they eat it when I see them, right? But then they don't eat tons of meals. And I would kind of rationalize. And is that true for some people? Definitely. Is it true for everybody? No. Then I realized and learned later on that there are genetic variances between individuals. There are, and we're identifying now things like the microbiome that influences this, hormones that influence this. Can you affect your metabolic rate to the point where you can slow it down, cause damage to it through your lifestyle? Yes. Is some of that affected by your genes? Yes. And then I realized that the variances, the differences between individuals can be very dramatic. But you do want to remember that most people are somewhere in the middle. So when we are truly talking about someone that just can eat just a ton of garbage and just stay lean, that is an outlier. That is not the average person. Most people, if they ate a lot of garbage, would gain lots of body fat and just they would look like they ate a lot of garbage. There are outliers, though, that make up a small percentage of the population of people where they eat, whatever they want, or they eat not well at all, and they maintain themselves pretty lean. A lot of us were like that when we were young teenagers. I remember, especially when I was 13, 14, 15 years old, those early teen years where I wanted to, because remember I had insecurities about being skinny, so I wanted to gain weight. And I know I ate a lot of food. You guys know my personality.
Oh God, at that age, you are fucking moving like no other, man.
But see, here's the thing: like I did a little bit of judo, but I wasn't athletic. Like you guys played a lot of sports. Like I did a lot of reading and watching TV, and I do some stuff outside, but I wasn't like outside playing hard all the time. But I ate a lot. Like in the morning, I'd drink half a gallon of milk and eat massive bowls of cereal and have all these eggs. And at lunch, I'd have like 3 sandwiches. And then dinner, I'd eat everything. And if I ate like I ate when I was 14, if I ate like that now, I would easily be 30, 40 pounds overweight. So I experienced that myself. But no doubt that had to do with the fact that my hormones I probably had the perfect like hormone profile to just be lean.
Well, I think why we were drawn to this question naturally is we just got off of hanging out with Rob Wolf, and talk about a fucking great dude to pick his brain when you get into to this type of a topic, because one of the things that he mentions is just how we don't take into account when you talk to nutritionists and dietitians and stuff like that. They don't take account of their ancestry and where they came from and their like
evolution.
Yeah, and evolution. Like how is that not accounted for, and how can you not see how obvious is that different types of people respond differently to all different types of foods, and so. And like Sal said, there's always going to be an exception to the rule. There's always going to be that guy that can eat whatever he wants, barely touches any weights, muscle builds on his body. Well, that's where we always talk about that. Genetics always play the number one role. Like, what dictates this person to be this way or that way? Like, genetics are always going to be a major factor. And then like, movement, activity, things like that, also another major factor. So, but I think for the most part, there is a general rule for all the things that we talk about. But I think you can't focus on those people. I think you can't, I mean, everyone's probably met somebody too that was like, you ever met somebody who was just like fucking brilliant? They were brilliant at just the way they're
without even trying.
Yeah, without even trying. Like he wasn't working any harder or studying any harder than I was, but like things just came together for them. Or that you talk about people that can, play like the piano. They just start playing and without hardly any practice or playing a sport. I mean, there's definitely these components, and I think a lot of that goes back to our ancestry and how we've evolved from our parents, our grandparents.
There's a complex amount of variables that will sort of trigger or sort of express these types of genes, right? So depending on what kind of card hand you're dealt, and you have this hand that there's a specific formula that will definitely optimize this hand.
God, that's such a great point right there, what you're saying, because this is something that we don't talk a lot about, that people don't realize. This is and I remember I saw a great TED Talk a couple years back. This is a major factor of the evolution of what we've seen in sports. Everybody knows, especially if you're a sports watcher, everybody knows if you watch basketball or football right now and you compare it to what it was 30 years ago, holy shit, like the athletes are just freaks. Well, then a lot of people like myself used to think like, oh, that's because of steroids and that type of stuff. No, what we've gotten really good at is learning how to figure out body types that were specific for the sports, or like what Justin's talking
You're
about.
picking the best athletes for each sport.
Yeah, these people were already genetically ideal for this. Then they put all the time and work and effort and training into it, and that's what's make them look almost superhuman in comparison to the average person. It's like they were already built to fit in this category, and now we've learned to like enhance
and
that.
the sooner that you can figure out this very specific formula, the more, the high performance you're going to be further on in life. Like, I know a lot of the super athletes out there that I've even been blessed to meet. Like, they've figured out when they were really, really little what they were good at, and they fine tune and sharpen that very specific way to optimize their movement, to eat, all this stuff at a very young age.
Yeah,
So
I see two lessons out of this question. Like, the first message and lesson from it is, and I hate to say it this way because it sounds kind of cliche, but don't worry about other people. That's number one, because people are so different that if you worry about other people, you're not going to figure out the best way for yourself. You just can't do that. And there are, Adam brought up ancestry and evolution, and I'll give you a couple examples of more extreme versions of that. For example, Native Americans. Native Americans' diabetes rate is something like 2 or 3 times as high as everybody else. When they eat the same Western American diet, the typical American diet, their diabetes rate is much higher than if you have a Caucasian, from European descent eating
It's
that
like
same diet.
African American with lactose intolerance.
Yeah,
It's extremely high.
And there's lots of theories to it. One of them being that they were hunter-gatherers for much longer, and so they were not exposed to high levels of starches and these types of things and sugars. And then when they eat the typical American diet, their body responds much different. Now, this situation, those people may do better on a higher fat, moderate protein, lower carbohydrate diet. Now, on the flip, you can put low carb, higher fat diets on some people, and they may have a polymorphism that gives them out of control triglycerides and cholesterol. That exists too. So you really figuring out what works best for you. And I hate saying that because it sounds like such a general question.
Yeah.
But it's very, very true. So, someone might eat shitty in it, but it might work for them. The other thing too is like appearances don't tell you everything. There's a lot of people who are underweight.
They don't tell you much at all.
Yeah, who are underweight or at normal weight who have horrible health.
Markers, yeah.
There's a spontaneous death from heart, where your heart just stops. Like, that happens at a higher rate amongst the hardcore athletes than it does amongst the regular population. Inflammatory markers, we're just starting to learn how to read them and what they mean. We're just starting to really break down the different particle sizes within cholesterol that tell us what those types of things, could potentially mean. So there's so many factors. It's almost impossible to answer specifically. Really just focus on yourself and just understand that although there are general truths and they will direct you in particular directions to try things out, you're so different and so individual that the only way to really discover what's going to work best for you on all levels, everything from a psychological level to an adherence level to just what feels the best and what gets you the leanest.
it's like asking, why am I not Brad Pitt? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I should be Brad Pitt.
I think that part of too what I get really passionate about is these genetic anomalies that are out there that are spreading information. And I'll tell you right now, the guys that are sitting in this room, like, no one in here is in a genetic we are pretty close to average as average can get, and then
we're squeezing high end average. You know what I mean?
Well, we struggle with all the same things that our listeners struggle.
I'm extra average.
But I feel like that
average plus.
This was an important piece to putting this trio together also was, for marketing reasons, it would be awesome to have a genetic anomaly sitting right next to me. Some guy that just like eats Taco Bell and looks fucking awesome.
We would be a lot more famous.
We would. Yeah. We would be. Or if he was like a super badass hot chick, like that would just be awesome.
I think you just want me to be a hot chick.
No, but that's,
we all do.
Be careful. And if you could take anything from answering this question, that I caution you on where you guys get your information and, is this guy or girl that's...
what sucks from this? I'll tell you what sucks. Social media creates just this distorted vision of just how many of these people exist.
Right.
Like if I go on Instagram, and I'm looking at fitness people, it gives me this distorted image that this what normally makes up 1% of the population is everybody. Like I'm looking through and I'm like, oh my God, everybody's this genetic freak.
Let's look at that. It's probably like 20 men and 20 women that have like over 1 million followers, right? But that's like who everybody looks at is like, oh, I should look like this.
I just look. It would be like me looking at the NBA always and judging my basketball skills based on the NBA, not realizing that I'm looking at such a small sliver of the population of the world. Like, look outside. Stop looking at social media. Yeah. Look outside. Walk around outside. Odds are, if you're working out, a few days a week and you're watching what you're eating,
go sit in a park at Disneyland. That's what America looks like.
Oh my God,
people! Truth.
You know what I'm saying?
Truth, right there. That it is. That really. And think about the fitness celebrities that we follow on social media. And ask yourself how many times you've been sitting at Disneyland or Great America or one of these big theme parks, like Justin said, and how many times does that body type walk by? Like I can't even think of. I don't. And I'll tell you right now,
it doesn't. When it does, I remember.
Oh my God!
So rare.
Yeah, right. It would stand out like a sore thumb. But when we're attached to them, we're attached to them on social media, and they're all connected to the same people, and they're following all the kind of same pages. It starts to come up in your feed all the time, and we get fed this information like this is the norm, or this could be possible for me if I just do some of these things this guy's doing or this girl's doing, and in reality, they're nothing like you.
Mm-hmm. Next up, Girls Gone WOD podcast.
Oh, our girls.
Something you felt insecure about last week or month, and how did you get through it?
Wow, you got me. You're going to go deep here.
Yeah, wow. Okay, I'll give you the first one that comes to mind. We're filled with insecurities, so it shouldn't be hard for us to figure this out.
Screaming infidelity.
Hey, Adam, since you have so many, why don't you go? We can totally fuck with each other on this one.
Really open up.
Like, why don't we name each other's insecurities? How about if we just take it to that level?
That would be hella fucked. This will turn into a fight.
Come
on, man.
Yes. No. So I'll tell you, the first one that just comes to mind is this last probably 3 weeks or so. Man, we have had a lineup. We have had a lineup of, PhDs, specialists, and authors that are just fucking brilliant. I mean, brilliant men and women. And that can be intimidating. That can be very intimidating especially when I don't know them ahead of time and their first impression is meeting me, the first time they come into the studio. And I'm totally somebody who, after a scenario or a situation like that happens, I try and reflect like how I handle myself and this and that. I totally evaluate all this, and I still act like a little schoolgirl with some of these guys and girls that come in and we get a chance to meet. And it's put
on plaid skirts.
Yeah, it's a process for me right now, right? Like. And the insecurity part is feeling intellectually inferior to these guys and girls because you're talking about some fucking brilliant minds, man. And I'm a pretty confident guy, but it can be very intimidating when you're sitting in these interview situations with some of these people. And if the way I handle it is I got to do it. It's part of the job, right? So I'm kind of forced into it, and what I don't think I am completely yet is totally myself. I still don't feel like I have 100% been comfortable where I'm all the way me. And I think part of that is the growing process of Mind Pump growing and us getting bigger and becoming a bigger name in the industry. Like, some of these names now actually know who we are when we reach out to them, which that definitely eases that insecurity feeling. But what I find myself doing, and I think I told this to you guys the other day, is, imagine somebody like a Paul Check just walks in, or like a Tom Bilyeu or someone like that just comes walking in, or a Rob Wolf, and I'm sitting down and I feel like I have to sell myself to them in the first 20 minutes. And that's my insecurity. That's me feeling like I'm, inferior to this person I'm talking to, and I'm trying to tell you how cool I am. And it's so obvious to me because it's not normal. I'm not that guy. I'm not somebody who's like that. But I do find myself getting like that, and it's tough. And I catch myself now, and I just kind of shut up, and then I redirect and probably ask them more questions. But I think that's probably the most glaring one to me right now. I know we're riddled with tons of insecurities, but that's something that's been on my mind in the last couple weeks, since you asked, the last couple weeks or month that I've been dealing with. And a part of that is, reassuring the confidence in myself. And one of the things that makes me feel better about it is it's a really neat thing. And I love noticing or watching this transition is we'll be interviewing these guys, right? And, some of them may not have a major background in mine. Some of them may have never even listened to our show, or maybe just listened to a little bit of it, so they don't really know much about us. And it's so cool to sit with these gentlemen in an interview, because these people will be going back and forth, and they're all super intellects. And you'll notice they'll go one direction or another direction. And between the three of us, there's always one of us that can really carry that conversation deep with them. And you can always see the transition that they make, right? Because no matter how much we try and set it up, the tattoos, the 6'3", 200-pound dudes standing in front of these people, right away we look like meatheads, and you can't help but think that we get judged that way. And part of me feels like I'm trying to sell myself on how we're not. There's more to us, right? But once we get into the interview and they get going, you see, and you can watch this. You can watch them change. You can see their demeanor change, and it takes about 30 to 45 minutes.
Isn't that fun though?
It is. It's awesome.
Great.
And I think
I love blowing people's perception.
Yes, and I think
or just blowing them.
Part of whoa, we'll leave that up to you. Okay. So part of why
that's Justin's
insecurity. We're gonna get an intern for that.
Part of me working through this insecurity that I have and what I've noticed is, and this goes across the board with these super intellects. Supreme athletes I've been around, billionaires I've been around. It's amazing when somebody is like just so dominant in an area, they tend to be really off somewhere else, either super socially awkward, no self-awareness or emotional intelligence or common sense, but then they're fucking brilliant in this area. And as soon as I noticed that and I recognized that, I realized, oh fuck, dude, I'm doing all right here. Like, and I shouldn't feel so insecure just because this guy is or this girl is so smart in this area. So
also keep this in mind. Like at some point you're going to meet someone that doesn't have that, someone who's going to have everything. That shouldn't change how you feel about yourself or your confidence for yourself. And here's something you want to consider. This is something that insecurities are things that I've been personally focusing on myself for 10 years. I mean, deep and heavy and hard. And one of the things that I more recently learned was the moment you really realize that you're having an insecurity and you're stressing about it, you're actually working on it at that same time. So, Adam, you just shared yours and what's really been your insecurity. But at the same time, what you've been doing a lot lately? Reading. You've been doing a shit ton of reading. A shit ton of reading.
Oh, I didn't share that. Yeah, that's,
so you're taking something that you've identified as an insecurity and you're turning it into something that's motivating, and you're also revisiting the actual insecurity portion of it. Because, yes, it'll motivate you to read, but if you never finally realize that there's no need to be insecure about that, then that's the ultimate goal. But at the same time, you're also, working on things. And I think that's where insecurities probably, why they exist in the first place, right? They're kind of motivations, like motivating factors to make you, pursue different things.
If you use them correctly, I agree.
Right.
I think a great point. I mean, fuck, I didn't even touch on that. I literally just
because you've been like a reading fanatic lately, and you've been listening to books at like 2 times speed and trying to learn how to speed read and all these different things. You can just get more information. So I think which I think is excellent. But one thing you got to realize, one thing that we should all realize, everybody should realize, because this is all different. It's different areas, right? All of us have. Most people have this in some way where you're in front of somebody for whatever reason you feel inferior, right? Or you think you're inferior. And one of the most impressive things anybody will ever notice about anybody is confidence. And confidence can't be faked. And it's funny because literally the second you realize that you're not inferior and that we're all just men, we're all just people, we're all humans.
Right.
That's when it just comes out right away, where the person meets you and right away they're like, oh,
yeah,
like
we can all relax here.
Yeah, we can all. It's all good, It's all. I did that particular one that you're feeling, Adam. I had that a while ago because I would train these surgeons and these like scientists, and I had some like a real smart group of clients that I would train. And when I'd start training, I was like, oh fuck, this is like a surgeon. I need to talk like a particular way and act a particular way. And, then we became friends and everything. And then we would go hang out. And I'm like, they're just regular. I mean, yeah, they're very smart. They work hard, but they're just regular people. And they're weird like I am. And, they're not perfect like I am. And that helped me a lot. For me personally, right now, I've dealt with quite a bit in my life. But right now, my biggest insecurity has to do with being a father. And this is because I, a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half now, actually, got divorced. And my children are very, very important to me. I love them, more than anything. And going through something like that, one of the first things you think, and one of the reasons why people will stay in marriages for far longer than they should, like I did. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about my ex. It was definitely mutual, but we stayed in it way too long. And it's because of the guilt of what you would do to your kids, and what, you don't want your kids to have to deal with a divorce, and you don't want your kids to have to deal with, dad's not going to be here and going between two different homes and all that stuff. And, once I got out of that and the divorce, was final, and, you still have that, like, I need to be the best father I possibly can because I put my kids through this thing, this horrible thing. And I'm slowly realizing, like, I'm not going to be able to protect them from everything. They're going to have to go through this life, right? Life has got some shitty situations. There are also opportunities for growth. People tell me I'm a great father. And it's funny because when you have an insecurity about something, nobody could tell you otherwise.
Oh, that's right. It's so true.
Like if I feel like I'm fat, if I feel like I'm skinny, if I feel like I'm not attractive or I'm not smart, like everybody around me could tell me, no, man, you're not. You look good, or you're smart, or, And if I don't believe it myself, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Everybody in the world could tell me I'm a great dad, but if I feel like I'm not, like if I feel guilty because I divorced, I got divorced with her mom, and, and I'm not as organized because I'm trying to organize this whole, like, dual custody thing, and, their school, and I'm trying to do all these different things that I wasn't necessarily involved with, before. Like, it doesn't matter what everybody says. I have to, like, understand and learn that about myself, that I am doing a good job. And part of the reason why I'm doing a good job is because I care about it. Like, that alone will tell me that I'm doing a good job. So that's what I've been dealing with more recently. And it's a very difficult one. It's a very, very deep one because it's not dealing with just me. It's dealing with someone who I value more than me, which I don't even know if that's the right thing to say or do, but it's true. Like, I value my children. So it's so much more difficult than, like, if I was dealing with my own insecurity. I think I've gotten pretty good now at, like, okay, I see that. Let me work on that. But now when someone else is involved, especially my kids, oh boy, that's been a very, very difficult.
Is there something that you are doing currently that is helping this, or that you find that helps you not feel this way, or that you're practicing? Or
so the time I spend with my kids now is much more quality than it was when I was married to their mother, because I took it for granted. I took for granted that I live with them all the time. They're always there. Now I read them, I read stories to them at night. I spend, we have movie night together. We play board games together. I make, I really want to connect with them more than just be around them. Whereas before, because I was always around, like I said, you just take it for granted. So objectively, I know I'm doing all these different things, but what makes me feel insecure is the guilt, right? The guilt of not, that we got divorced. The guilt that now my kids have to live in two different homes, and I've disrupted their normal routine, that they have to tell their friends, what's going on, and that, all these different things that, and like, let me put it this way, like, this is how bad it is. If my kids do anything, like at school, like if I get a report card and I see that my kid didn't do 3 assignments, do you know where my mind immediately goes? Oh, it's because I got divorced. Oh, this is like, they're too stressed out because of the situation.
Yeah. That's going to be hard to disassociate,
It's very difficult to disconnect, to disassociate that, because now I feel like that's the cause of anything.
Right.
Like, oh, she's acting up. I know, maybe it's because, the whole situation's stressing her out, or what's going on.
Do you find yourself catching that though now? Like,
much more.
When it comes up, it pops up, you're like, no, shut up.
Much more now. And it's just something I'm working on. But initially, and like this is true of all, I think all insecurities, you're not aware of them. You're not even aware that you have that insecurity.
Well,
and now I'm
it's
aware
good
of it.
that you're talking about it, because now it's like it's one of those things. Yeah, that's just going to be a reoccurring thing, just because it's so deep ingrained, and you want to be the best. Especially when kids, you reflect on that. Like you want to be the best you can be around them, but yeah, you can't be so like that's just one of those things. You can only beat yourself up so much.
Well, I feel like too there's an area here where you can almost argue that there's a lot of positive from it too.
Are you kidding me?
Of course.
I mean,
I'm telling you
especially
right now.
being more present.
I'm telling you right now, objectively speaking, if I step outside of it, which I've done a lot of meditating on this, a lot of thinking about this, objectively speaking, I am a much better father now than I was before. They have a much better relationship with me now
So you need to tell yourself
than
that
before.
more.
I do,
there you go.
I do. But part of I'm in the phase now where I've identified it, and now I can work on it.
Yeah.
I was in the phase where I didn't even know it existed.
which where most people are. I feel like most people
That's the hard. That's a hard fucking
have
step.
insecurities like this, and it drives them to act certain ways, which unfortunately are to blame others or to point to, what I'm saying, and or to react to things versus to objectively pull yourself out, assess that, hey, this just that's exactly how I see I pull myself from these situations and I go, okay, well, I feel inferior because intellectually. One, remind myself, and then two, do something about that. And that was part, like you brought up the voracious reading right now. Well, that's
God, I love it when he uses big words.
stupid.
Voracious. He rolls it off his tongue.
So those are things that I think are really good from that insecurity. I mean, it's an insecurity and being aware of it, and then reminding yourself that no, I'm not. But then also, what can I do about it to improve that? And I think that's the same thing that you've done as a father. You just got to remind yourself that, man, I am a fucking good father, and I'm continuing to be a better father because this just made me aware of areas that I can continue to improve on. So I think that's the real challenge for people is to, be able to do that. I think so many people are afraid to look in the mirror, man, when it comes to shit like that. What about you, Just?
Yeah, I think for me the reoccurring theme is that I feel really insecure talking about myself in general. Like
You're insecure about this question.
Honestly, I don't I avoid a lot of topics that revolve around myself, even when I'm at family functions, when I'm, amongst a group of friends. Like I tend to steer the conversation sort of away to where I don't have to sit there and explain everything I'm up to, explain who I am and what I'm about and all these types of things. And so, just being on the podcast, obviously it's one of those situations where I'm under the fire and I have to get better at this. And I feel like I've definitely grown quite a bit with that as far as expressing myself, and that I do have opinions and I do have a way of thinking that is unique, and I'm not just absorbing everybody else's ideas. Like I really have a lot of my own ideas, and I don't have to back away from them. And I think that that's something I've come to realize, that everybody has their own voice, and it's just a matter of time for me to be able to express it the way that I want to. So,
what makes you uncomfortable about talking about yourself?
I have no idea. I think
I think
it was a lot of the authority growing up that.
Do you feel like it's because you feel like you're boasting or you're bragging and you don't like to do that?
Yeah,
because you have that
Absolutely.
personality. You definitely have the anti showboat, anti show
you typically hate those guys.
Yeah. No, I do. That's why I'm so surprised we're friends. You guys. It's really bizarre. But yeah, no, seriously. I've never been that guy that's like, I fucking own you. Unless we're in the middle of a game, and I'll say that to your face. But I don't carry myself that way. I tend to want to just hang out and be the friend that's there, for people or whatever. I don't know. I just don't like centering things around myself very often, but I've really been taking steps away from that and trying to pursue what defines me. And I guess I was just, it just didn't seem appealing to me. I didn't really feel like my own unique individual, growing up. I had a lot of what you can't do this, be humble. It was everything growing up was about being humble. And that's the way that I was sort of raised. So getting outside of that is a really, really tough, and it's there's a lot of friction there for me to understand like how to do that and not be a douchebag.
Well, you don't want it to prevent you from being able to self-examine. You know what I'm saying? That's where the problem, like not talking to other people about yourself, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you have a problem, when you have an issue, when you're troubled, when you're sad, when you're stressed, when you're anxious, when you feel like you just can't.
Yeah, I bury that shit.
Right. Yeah. Like you want to be able to talk, especially like your wife, like that's your partner, right?
Right.
That's a very hard thing for a lot of people to do. I was like that, where it's hard for me to tell this person, like, I'm weak right now, I can't do this. And when you're not able to do that, it comes out in other ways. And many times it's more destructive.
Well, I'll tell you,
Absolutely.
Talking about the wives or the partners and getting to the, I always liked, okay, what are some actions or things that people can take away from this? I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast or not, but something that, Katrina and I are both very similar in this area where we're very driven, we're very motivated. We don't let a lot of little bullshit bother us or slow us down, right? But because of that, we also have trained ourselves to suppress things that could be bothering us or suppress things that we do need to talk about or discuss, but because we don't think they're a big deal, which is like, we mow through them. But then when it's happening is that starts to build up, and then there's this silent animosity for one or the other, or something ends up exploding over some bullshit, right? So something that it's been like huge for us in the last 2 months is, talking about I've been reading a lot. Well, one of the things I always go, so I'm reading on my own, and then I'm also reading with her. So, we've made a goal because we know how crazy we are. We know how crazy we are with our schedule and stuff, that we say, okay, the goal is to do this as much as we can, right? I mean, if we can do this every night, that would be awesome. But we're not silly. Like, we know that life is going to happen. We have a lot going on. And I know with you guys with kids and shit going on, it's tough to commit to that. But what we agreed upon was, hey, listen, we'll never let a whole week go by that we don't spend this time learning together. And what happens when we do that, it's amazing the conversation that gets promoted from that. Totally nothing to do with maybe the book that we're reading, but because we're being so mindful and present, and
because you're in that space together.
Yeah, exactly. We're in that space together, right? We're getting those that like have followed Stephen Kotler and stuff like that. The first book we read together was Rise of Superman, and getting into flow state. I truly can feel that. And it's an amazing, powerful tool that we have created for ourselves by just putting that discipline of, hey, it's been almost a full week and we have not done this together. We're making time. We're going to make time. Now, I'd like to make more time, but at the bare minimum, we're sitting down for a minimum of an hour or 2 hours every single week where we're going through this. And it's amazing, the conversation that gets stimulated from that. So
it totally is.
If I can give that to those that are in relationships and couples, is, man, make time for each other to be mindful and present. And easiest way is to go through like a book for me. Here's
a tool that I've been using more recently that has been so effective, because we said this about, identifying your insecurity or an issue. This first step is becoming aware of it. Sounds easy, right? But it's very difficult because you're in it. You don't see it. It's just you're living it. So it's very difficult to go from not aware to aware. Once you're aware, then you can make the changes and then you can see it. But before you become aware of it, it's very, very difficult and it feels impossible. And one thing that I've been doing rather more recently is there's certain people around me that I trust fully, and that I respect. Like you guys, I trust and respect you guys fully, to the point where if you guys were to give me an opinion on something, I would definitely give it weight. I would definitely say, well, that's Justin said that, or Adam said that, or Doug said, I'm going to give weight to that because these are men that I trust with my life. These are men that are intelligent and who, probably have a really good opinion. And there's other people around me as well that are like that. And so what I've done to kind of hijack the whole becoming aware thing is I am starting to learn to just trust people. And what I mean by that is if one of you guys comes to me and says, Sal, last week you're acting like an asshole because you're blah, 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 blah. Now, my immediate thing is to be like, no, I'm not. What the fuck you're talking about? You're being an asshole. Because you're in it, right? So you don't even know that you're being an asshole. You're in it and you want to be defensive because you're being told that you're doing something that may not be good or accurate or whatever. But to kind of hijack that, and initially you'll have that response. But what I've done now is I'll have that response, then I'll wait for myself to have that response, and I'll go back and be like, okay, I trust this person. I'm going to take what they're saying seriously and look into it. And many times I'm like, holy fuck, they were right. Like that person was totally right. I am doing this particular thing, or I am motivated by this particular insecurity, and boom, awareness right away. So I think that's what's important about having like a really close partner and friends and people around you, is sometimes you just got to trust them.
Yeah.
You know, if you have issues with food or body image issues, for example, and the people around you are saying, listen, man, you look really good. And, you know,
well, be open to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Around your significant
but just believe
others
them.
or people that, you trust. Like, I think from my perspective, that's a big step, you know, from being able to come to you guys and be like, hey, you know, how do you guys feel about, you know, the way I interacted with this person, or, you know, like having that conversation start, so that way, you know, that sort of assessment process can start.
Excellent. Hey, before we get into the next question, Doug, I want to remind everybody that we're having the Barefoot Specialist certification here this coming weekend, Saturday and Sunday. This is training on imbalances and strength and connectivity of the feet and the ankles. And let me tell you, this is huge, especially coming from someone who's been in training as long as I have. You don't learn this in your normal certifications. I don't learn anything above. Or, you know, I barely learned a little bit about the ankle. I know a lot about the knees, the hips, the shoulders, the back, and nothing on the feet. And let me tell you something, makes a huge, huge difference.
Oh, not to mention, too, that you get all the same CEUs for your NASM, your AFA, NCSF, ACE, all the big ones.
All the main hitters.
So those that are trainers that are listening. So even if you're not a trainer, I think this is a phenomenal certification to go through.
CEUs.
Yeah, so it's happening this weekend. What is it, 25th and 26th? Here at Mind Pump Media. You can sign up at mindpumpmedia.com under the events calendar.
That's correct.
Excellent.
All right, our final question is from Young Crazy Fool. How do you progress someone into a deep squat? What are the steps to getting there?
Okay, there's a few things.
Well,
I think we need I think first
You force them.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? That's,
sit on 'em.
This is a really good question, because I think you know, we've talked a lot, especially in the last year or so. I put a lot of emphasis on watching me, you know, go from, you know, squatting at 90 degrees with my belt and shoes to being able to go barefoot, sitting all the way down, and you know, you just can't go from.
There's steps.
Yes, there's a lot of steps and a lot of time to do that. Now, you could do it, but a lot of people will have all kinds of stuff going on, and you're at risk of injury if you try and progress yourself too fast. And, you know, so I typically pick an area, and it's normally, you know, foot, ankle, or hip that I'm really going to address first and see how much more how much more travel, you know, with good form does this allow me? So in other words,
where does it break down?
Yeah. So, and those are the areas that are common, right? The hips, ankle, foot. That's where when you're talking about a deep squat, that the limiting factors are typically somebody has poor hip mobility, poor ankle mobility, or poor foot connection. So in my opinion, those three areas are the main areas that I'm looking at. Now, you can technically address all three at the same time. That's totally fine. Like, that's how Prime was designed. Prime is designed to help people look, assess their squat, and then address all those collectively. For me, it worked really well by taking an area and really getting good. Like, you know, I took my hips first, and it was a lot of 90-90 work, a lot of the work that we put up on the YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed to that, subscribe to that. This is the type of stuff that we drop on there.
Well, let's not go too far from Prime, because this is the sole reason why we've created Prime, or even highlighted the fact that people need to reassess their movement in general. And like going through that process and going through the checkpoints, it's very important to get it back in tune with your body and the processes that get you into certain positions. So you have to really slow down. You got to slow down, and this may be something that you know, you want to progress. You always want to progress, but you might even need to regress even further and address very like small, you know, patterns that are hardwired in you that you need to break. And so this is something like Adam's mentioned, ankles or hips or, wherever the breaking point is or the main source of the dysfunction. We got to get to the root of that.
Mm-hmm. One of the, I mean, just to give you some like bullet points, because how do you get someone to progress into a deep squat is very individual, obviously, but there's kind of this general answer, and it's really break the movement down into smaller movements or smaller ranges of motion and practice the squat. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say I get somebody who goes into a half squat, anything past a half squat, and shit breaks down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get them to master and perfect that half squat plus an inch. Like I might make them go just a tiny bit lower, master that, practice that. Once they've got that under control, now we go another inch and we practice that.
So this is where props, tend to come in handy, right? So if you have like a TRX you're holding on to, or you have a box underneath your butt that you're trying to achieve, like as far as the height is concerned. So basically put goals out in front of this process and really like master that skill of getting down into depth and then control and adding muscle tension and support. So you got to learn all these things. You got to teach your body that you're supported.
And you want to identify, like, is it a strength issue? If it's a strength issue, then just practice with good control and tension and shorter ranges of motion that become longer and longer over time. If it's tightness, let's say the person gets down and they can't go any lower because their hips are tight or their calves are tight or they don't have good mobility in particular joints, then the rule of thumb is first gain passive range of motion. So this is where static stretching is really effective when it comes to correctional type stuff. So if I take someone whose hips are they're just too tight, period. They can't get into a deep squat because hips are too tight. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and passively get better range of motion in their hips. So this is where I'll get them in a stretch with their hips and I'll hold it for them and get that range of motion. Once I've established range of motion through me doing it for them, then I try and connect it to where they do it. Then I try and connect it with strength. So this is like this process of progression where I'm going range of motion passively, range of motion actively, control within range of motion with tension, and then movement within that new range of motion. And you follow that over and over and over again and regress every time you notice something breaks down. Like, okay, wow, we've got down to a full squat. Now I'm going to put a little bit of weight on you. Oh, looks like it broke down again at the bottom. Take the weight off and go or keep the weight on and go up a little higher and progress you down. Different ways you can regress, but it's breaking it down into smaller and smaller pieces.
It is hard to like really get into this because there is so I totally left out like thoracic mobility. I don't know why I did that because that was another limiting factor of mine, right? So I started in the order that Sal was saying. Exactly what happened to me was like, okay, the first thing that was the major limiting factor, which I think is going to be very common with the majority of people, that 90-degree squat or less. So the hip mobility and the ability to get in there, right? So the stretching, the 90-90s, things like that, mobilizing the hips, starting to do mobility work so you can strengthen in those areas without any weight, nothing like that at all. And then once I got like, okay, now I've got the hip mobility, then I started to notice that my ankles were a limiting factor and my thoracic mobility was, because as you get down deeper into the squat, you'll see people tend to round forward even more. And so just because you're down in a deep squat because you opened your hips up doesn't necessarily mean it's safe for you to start loading the back yet, because now you get deeper than 90, and then now all of a sudden you see, because of the limiting thoracic mobility, you round forward, and now you get this rounded lower back because of how tight you are and the limiting factor up there. And or you start to notice you go deeper and you rock forward onto the the front of your feet, and your heels start to come off the ground, which is why you see people want to use squat shoes to kind of cheat that so they can get deeper into their squat. So addressing ankle mobility. So there is a lot of individuality in this, but there are some major areas I think that are super common, which is the hips, the ankles, the feet, and then I left out the thoracic mobility that you should be looking at, which is all stuff, just so you know. I mean, this was a lot of what motivated us. One, with Prime. So even if I'm not trying to sell you on my Prime. If you don't want to buy Prime, then go to the YouTube channel and subscribe to that. And we've created playlists that and you'll see anything that's probably in the white or the yellow is going to be stuff that you're going to be really wanting to focus on. So we did a lot of stuff in MAPS White and MAPS Yellow, which is MAPS Prime, that really addresses these areas that we're talking about, and start looking at these mobility drills and exercises or tension movements that we just did a tension series. Like all these things are going to improve the depth in your squat if you start incorporating.
Yeah,
them.
one of the things that I worked with a lot of like special populations, like older people over the age of 65 and 70, and my goal was always to be able to get them to do a squat. One of the things that I would do is either I would start them, depending on how out of shape they were, how deconditioned they were. I'd have them practice just sitting down in a chair with good form, like they're going to get into a squat, but not actually doing the squat part. So I actually have them slow down, try and control so they don't like just fall in the chair. So that was one regression I would do. And a couple steps later would be I would get them to master a lunge, a stationary lunge while holding something for balance, because I knew that front leg was essentially doing the squat motion. Once I could get them to master the lunge, then I moved them to squatting with a broomstick across the front of their shoulders, because it's easier to master the front squat than it is to master the back squat, because you don't need as much of the mobility and whatever. And I'm not using resistance; it's just something real light. I even had these like padded 5-pound bars I put across the shoulders. Get them to practice that, and then some of them we never got to the squat. We never got to the back squat. It's just I just continue to slowly progress them, but we just never got to that point.
Well, when you talk about somebody who's that old for so many years of their life, they have created imbalances. It's very, very tough to get someone to back squat, because back squats
require shoulder mobility, spine mobility. I mean, so many different things.
Yeah, that's why it's the best, right? Yeah. And that's why too. I think we used to say this a lot on our show early on, and we haven't really addressed this. So it's a good time to say this, that if you have problems squatting, do not just, especially if you're fucking young, and by young I mean less than 50, 60 years old, like your goal should be to get to the point where you can do a deep squat, even if it's with no weight on your back. Like the idea that this is a very normal functional movement we should all be able to do.
I can't even stress that enough. Like the amount that will contribute to
everything,
your ability to move,
the
amount of muscle you can put on your lower body, how tight and conditioned your upper body is, your overall functionality, like the amount that just being able to get into a squat without weight, with good control, the amount that will contribute positively to all those things is tremendous. We're not even talking about going to the gym and doing hardcore, heavy back squats. So if you can't get into a squat with no weight, just sit into a squat, feet flat, good connectivity through the feet all the way up to the back, then that should be your goal. And I promise you, the process of getting there will make you better at everything.
At everything.
100%.
It makes you better at everything.
100%.
So check this out. We put up a brand new video on YouTube every single day. So get on there, subscribe. You will learn a ton. And here's another good thing that we do. We have the 30 days of coaching right now, which we're offering for free at mindpumpmedia.com. Here's what happens. Every day we cover a topic. We'll give you information on that topic. Maybe it's protein, maybe it's carbohydrates, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's eating organic food or just wellness in general. We cover that topic, and then we give you links to episodes where we cover that topic in detail, and we timestamp it so you can see when we talk about that particular subject. So if you really want to learn about water intake, sign up for this 30 days of coaching. One of those days is going to come through, and you're going to get all the episodes where we cover that timestamp. So you can just click on it, find that right minute mark, and listen to what we have to say about these particular things. We have almost 500 episodes. There's a lot of information out there. It's a great way to navigate it all, and it's absolutely for free. All you do is you go to mindpumpmedia.com and opt in, sign yourself up. And lastly, check us out on Instagram at mindpumpradio. That's where you can ask these questions that we answer on these Q&A episodes. You can also find my personal page at mindpumpsal. Adam's personal page is at mindpumpadam, and Justin is at mindpumpjustin.
Thank you for listening to Mind Pump. If your goal is to build and shape your body, dramatically improve your health and energy, and maximize your overall performance, check out our discounted RGB Super Bundle at mindpumpmedia.com. The RGB Super Bundle includes MAPS Anabolic, MAPS Performance, and MAPS Aesthetic. 9 months of phased expert exercise programming designed by Sal, Adam, and Justin to systematically transform the way your body looks, feels, and performs. With detailed workout blueprints and over 200 videos, the RGB Super Bundle is like having Sal, Adam, and Justin as your own personal trainers, but at a fraction of the price.
The RGB Super Bundle has a full 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can get it now plus other valuable free resources at mindpumpmedia.com. If you enjoy this show, please share the love by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes and by introducing Mind Pump to your friends and family. We thank you for your support, and until next time, this is Mind Pump.